From Washington, this is VOA News. I'm David Forrest reporting Summiteers put pressure on Russia. U.S. President Barack Obama and German Chancellor Angela Merkel met together before the G7 summit in Germany.
So this morning, as we celebrate one of the strongest alliances the world has ever known, my message to the German people is simple. We are grateful for your friendship, for your leadership. We stand together as inseparable allies in Europe and around the world.
Mr. Obama and Ms. Merkel agreed that economic sanctions against Russia should only be eased when Russia implements an agreed-upon truce in eastern Ukraine. Turkey's leading party lost its absolute majority in parliamentary elections on Sunday, a setback for President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's bid to rewrite the nation's constitution and create a presidential democracy. Dorian Jones takes a look.
While the AKP will remain the largest party in parliament, it suffered heavy losses in Sunday's election. A faltering economy is cited as a key factor behind the losses after a decade of unprecedented economic growth for Turkey. But it was the success of the pro-Kurdish HDP in breaking through the 10% vote count threshold that did the most damage to the AK party. The around 70 seats it secured will come almost exclusively from the governing party, its chief rival in the Kurdish regions. Dorian Jones, Istanbul.
Iraqi forces advanced on the town of Baiji on Sunday in a bid to reclaim the area from the Islamic State group. Military officials say government troops gained ground overnight. IS forces have targeted oil production sites in Iraq and Syria, using the revenue from sales to fund their operations. This is VOA News. Airstrikes by a Saudi-led coalition in the Yemeni capital Sunday killed at least 44 people, including civilians. The bombings targeted the headquarters of Yemen's armed forces in rebel-held Sana'a. The attacks come a week before the scheduled start of peace talks between rival political factions. Protesters burned ballot boxes in several troubled states in southern Mexico Sunday in an attempt to disrupt midterm elections that are being seen as a test for President Enrique Peña Nieto. 80 million people are eligible to select the lower house of Congress, hundreds of mayors, and 9 governors. British official Captain Nick Cook-Priest says as many as 500,000 people in Libya are thinking about crossing the Mediterranean Sea this summer, heading to Europe. On Sunday, Britain's Ministry of Defense said the warship HMS Bulwark had been dispatched to rescue at least 500 of the migrants. Also on Sunday, an Italian Coast Guard ship carrying 316 migrants from 3 separate operations off Libya's coast docked at an Italian port. There is fighting in northeastern Afghanistan, where officials say a counteroffensive is underway to retake control of a remote district captured by the Taliban on Saturday. Meanwhile, the United Nations is warning the intensifying Afghan conflict is taxing humanitarian capacities. Ayaz Gul has a report.
The fighting broke out on Saturday when hundreds of heavily armed Taliban insurgents assaulted and laid siege to the mountainous Yamgan district in Badakhshan province. Provincial authorities insist Afghan security forces engaged the assailants for several hours before they tactically retreated to prevent civilian casualties. On Sunday, defense officials said ground and air forces are engaged in a counter-operation to retake the remote district. A spokesman for the Afghan Defense Ministry, Daulat Waziri, tells VOA that national troops are close to ousting the Taliban from Yamgan. Ayaz Gulf, Islamabad.
A new worldwide survey on climate change shows nearly 80% of the public is very concerned about the impact of global warming, and they say all nations should do their part to stop it. The poll was taken in 79 countries by a group calling itself Worldwide Views on Climate and Energy. 10,000 people met simultaneously on Saturday to debate climate change and to take the survey. Organizers say it was the largest ever global citizens meeting on the issue. Nearly half of those asked believe the world should give up exploring for fossil fuel reserves such as oil and coal, two of the chief sources of pollution. From the VOA News Center in Washington, I'm David Forrest.
That's the latest world news from VOA.